Accessing library computer data.
And to make sure history never forgets the name Enterprise.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Pensky Podcast. If you haven't tuned in before, this is a podcast where we are going through all 178 episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation, giving our thoughts and feelings and feedback and all that jazz about every single one. Right now we are up to episode 13 of season 2. This one is called Time Squared. It was directed by Joseph L. Scanlon, written by Kurt Michael Bensmiller, and it aired back on April 3rd, 1989. In this episode, the crew of the Enterprise encounter a double of Captain Picard, apparently from 6 hours in the future. So for this one, I'm going to be joined by a new guest star here. His name's Christian. He has come on to talk about Time Squared. Does a great job, I think, and let me know what you guys think. You can leave a comment, rating, YouTube, all that jazz. Only if you enjoy the content, though, huh? I'll make that the one prerequisite. So right after this little break, this audio clip, we will get to talking with Christian about Time Squared.
I just don't understand how you could have ended up in a shuttlecraft while the Enterprise was being destroyed.
Nor I. The last thing you would do is leave the bridge at the Enterprise during an emergency.
Yes.
All right. Let's proceed on the premise that what we have just seen happened, and that in less than 4 hours from now, the Enterprise will be destroyed, and somehow, although this is unfathomable, I and I alone escape.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed that little clip. As I promised, here I am with Christian. Christian, how are you?
Hey, I'm pretty good.
Good. You just got done watching Time Squared?
Yes, I did.
So, we are going to talk for the next, half hour, 45 minutes or whatever, about this episode, which is called Time Squared. This, as I said in the recap, is episode 13 of season 2. So what were your general thoughts about this?
Well, first, I have to, put a caveat on a lot of these things. My view of a lot of TNG episodes is skewed because I grew up watching them.
Yep.
And so, this is one of them that I remember watching when I was a wee little kid.
Yeah.
And so, I think it has problems and it's not, amazing, but I actually did enjoy it. I think I enjoyed it a little more watching it again. One thing that stood out to me is, I kind of noticed it before, but I didn't think about it. The soundtrack, I feel, is really good.
Yes.
I don't always notice that, but it's very dramatic and creepy, and it adds a lot when a bad soundtrack can really detract from it. So I really enjoyed that part of it.
Yeah, I don't notice the music in Star Trek too much. It's really sort of weird random episodes where I noticed it, I noticed in Okana, the Outrageous Okana, for whatever reason, even though it's not a great episode.
Well, they have the go-to, the funny, quirky music to signify that something funny is happening.
Right, yeah. And
to the audience.
This one, they've got the creepy music down pat.
Yes.
This one, it's funny you say that because I probably feel the same way about the Royale, which is probably, it's one I remember from growing up. So I'm probably overly attached to it.
Well, actually, rewatching it, and this is not about Time Squared, but I actually enjoyed the Royale more watching it again recently. I kind of remembered it as a crappy episode.
Yeah.
But rewatching, I'm like, this isn't terrible at all.
No, it sound, if you were to describe it to someone, I think it would sound like a terrible episode, but I don't think it's that bad at all. But Time Squared, I remembered, I think in the Royale podcast, I was just talking about it with Clay, and I was like, I remember this one being, there's another Picard from the future, and he's scared. And
yes.
and that's pretty much exactly what happens in this one.
Pretty much.
My general idea of this one is that this one's pretty good up until the conference room meeting, and then it all kind of falls apart in the end. Did you have any?
Not a lot happens. I mean, I feel like they spend a lot of time, introducing this mystery, then kind of talking about it, and being very confused, but nothing really happens. In the end, nothing happens. That they kind of get out of it by doing nothing.
No, yeah,
They just turn around.
Yeah, I think the problem with it is that like it starts off really cool. It's sort of a mystery.
Yes.
It's like,
well,
sorry.
First off,
go ahead.
I could talk about the breakfast scene for like an hour.
Yeah. Which ultimately, it doesn't have anything to do with anything. But
it has nothing to do with it.
What's interesting about that scene, I guess we'll start there. There's a scene in the beginning where Riker is making food.
Eggs.
Yeah, he's making eggs. He's making eggs for Worf, Data, Geordi, and Pulaski. And it's the teaser scene, and it is totally pointless to the rest of the episode.
Yep.
What I think is fascinating about it is that there are so many contradictions in that one scene.
Yeah.
The first one is that Pulaski says that he's making omelets when he's clearly making scrambled eggs.
Exactly. And those eggs are clearly not making that sound. That is complete ADR.
Yeah,
those eggs are burning.
A little post-production on his futuristic frying pan. And then
that and his single whisk.
Yeah, that's right, his future whisk. And they're like space eggs.
Only has one wire. Yes.
There's some kind of species of bird or something that I've never heard of.
Owan.
And what's the other thing? This is kind of a future spoiler, but Pulaski acts like she has never met Riker's father.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Which is going to be changed in an upcoming episode.
Yep.
And then outside of that, let's see. So outside of that, I'm just going to briefly run through what happens here.
Yeah, go ahead.
They find out that there's a shuttle in the middle of nowhere that's powered down. So they fly over to it and they bring it on board. And inside the shuttle is a passed out Picard. They find that the shuttle is from 6 hours in the future, and therefore the passed out Picard is from 6 hours in the future. And so they're trying to figure out what they need to do. They find the log on the shuttle that says that this Picard escaped his Enterprise and it blew up and he sort of went back in time. And after that, as they start getting closer to the time that this Picard came from, he starts to wake up. And eventually he wakes up, he goes with Picard to the shuttle bay. They think that the entity that's in this sort of time whirlpool is after Picard, so they figure they'll leave the Enterprise, which is what the previous Picard did. Our Picard disagrees with that. He kills his double and then demands that the Enterprise goes into the center of the vortex, and that fixes everything. And that's the end of the episode.
Yep.
Like I said, I thought that the first bit, while it's a little bit slow, is good.
Yes.
Until you start to figure out what's going on.
Well, yeah, well, there's a lot. I mean, there's parts of it that I like. I like the fact that they are just as confused by the time paradox as we are.
Yeah.
It makes me feel smarter. But
it's also unlike any time paradox I've ever heard of in my life because they're like everything's backwards in the future, I guess.
Yeah, it's weird. They spend a lot of time without explicitly saying it, going on and on about how this shouldn't work. Oh my gosh, the stimulant made him fall asleep, and the sedative woke him up.
Yeah.
But they never seem to put two and two together. Like, oh yeah, absolutely. Everything's reversed in the future.
Yeah, that's funny. They never actually come to the conclusion that everything's backwards. They just kind of figure it out eventually.
Yes,
it's weird.
There's a lot that's left completely unsolved, and in a way, I don't mind that.
Yep.
Because sometimes it's best to leave things unexplained, because the more you try to explain it, the more hokey or contrived it may seem. But if it's a mystery, well, then your brain you're just going to think about, well, what if it's this? What if it's this? It keeps you thinking. I'm not sure if that works well for the episode, but it's not necessarily inherently a bad thing.
No, I don't think it's inherently a bad thing. I'd argue that I don't think this show went far enough in explaining anything that was going on. And I think I'll tell you the big reveal about what happened to this episode.
Yes, I heard.
Okay, this was originally designed to be a standalone two-parter, so each part would be...
Oh, I didn't know that.
Each part was supposed to be its own episode. And the second part was going to be Q Who. So what they would find at the end of this episode is that Q is the cause of the time vortex. And that's why the cloud is after Picard. And that's why going into the middle of it fixes everything. Because Q is there in the middle of it.
Oh.
So instead, what we're left with is a show that they act like something is going to happen. And then nothing happens. And it just ends.
Yeah, I had heard that Q was supposed to be involved. I did not know about the connection to Q Who.
Yes, and which is kind of cool, which would be a great little thing. And for some reason, Roddenberry did not want that to happen. I don't know why. It seems like he'd rather cripple...
I think Roddenberry was against two-parters in general.
Yeah, probably.
A lot early on.
Yep.
And he he didn't like two-parters, he didn't like referencing back upon itself, which is funny because they actually reference both TOS and two of their own TNG episodes in the discussion between Picard and Riker.
Yeah, it's funny when the show calls back to itself, it's always in a scene where they list a bunch of stuff that they've already done, which is it's never like a one-off mention of remember that time we did this. It's always like, could it be like that episode here or that episode or this episode? That's kind of true about what you're saying about Roddenberry. I guess because Roddenberry, they haven't done a two-parter really, have they? I mean,
they have not.
Farscape is one episode. It's just 2 hours long.
Yes, it's a feature-length one, and the only other two-parter was the weird one going all the way back to the original series. The Menagerie.
Yeah,
the Menagerie, which is just a clip show of the cage.
Yeah, so that
was split into 2 episodes. But he didn't like doing. There's no cliffhangers. There's no two-parters. Nothing.
Huh. I guess obviously Best of Both Worlds is the first two-parter. Then.
Yep, it is.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. And that's obviously when Roddenberry started to leave his hands off the reins, I guess, for a little bit. But
I think it was great. He was losing more and more control as time went on.
Yeah, he was getting sicker.
Yeah,
less time to spend on the show. So basically, what I consider the turning point in the show is the conference room meeting, where everything up to that point had felt very much like a good episode of Next Generation. And they sort of discuss their options, and then after that, the time vortex appears, and the other Picard wakes up. And I have what did you think of the other Picard?
Well, first, one thing about the briefing scene that I did like is the recovered mission logs are creepy as fuck.
They really are.
I loved them. It's kind of with the weird music playing and everything's kind of fuzzy and it's zooming out. All of a sudden, you see the Enterprise get destroyed, which is the first of many, many times destroying the Enterprise without actually destroying the Enterprise.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I guess the Yamato kind of counts.
Yeah, it's just basically a double. But it's funny you mentioned the because I was super creeped out by the log too, because it's almost like a paranormal activity footage. Like Riker's just standing there in this weird sort of grainy footage as Picard flies into what is a great effect. The time vortex is stupid, but the effect looks really good.
Yes. Exactly.
So there's that going for it. So sorry, continue what you were saying.
I lost my train of thought.
Well, just how you liked the log, watching the logs and the mission.
Yeah,
briefing.
the log was good, and then after when they find the actual alternate Picard, I actually came up with a nickname for him. I wasn't sure if he was future or alternate Picard, so I just call him future alternate Picard or FAP for short.
There he is. It's a big old FAP right there.
I was always really confused when I was originally watching this why he couldn't sit up. And he was kind of acting really weird whenever he was trying to look around. And I finally realized watching this years later that it's the restraining field. So that makes a little bit more sense. But it's weird. Did they do something with his makeup or the lighting to make him look different?
Yes, I think. I think he has.
Whenever you see the two of them, he looks
old.
Different.
He looks like they put old age makeup on him, and I don't know why they did that. He's only 6 hours in the future. I don't understand, unless it's the it's like ash from the antimatter explosion that they somehow realize when they look at the shuttle and they're like, oh, it got damaged in the explosion,
which is the smallest scorch marks.
Yes,
ever
of a huge nuclear explosion. Basically, is what we're led to believe.
I don't know why. I never got why he's so, as Picard says later, locked in. I never really got that part. I do like when Troy is describing what it's like for him. She says it's a nightmare of disjointed images and half-heard voices in another dimension looking at us across a great chasm. It's kind of hokey, but I actually like the description. It's for something so strange. That description gave me a sense of, wow, this is like just bizarre. What in God's name is going on?
No, it's good. It's a good speech.
Yeah.
But
I don't quite understand why necessarily alternate Picard is acting this way.
No, it goes in with why everything is backwards. It's like no time traveling show in history has ever had this effect on someone when they go back in time. I can sort of understand him being sleepy, or knocked out until he gets to his time. Yeah, I can sort of buy that like happening. I don't understand why he refuses to budge from the plan that he knows is not working, which doesn't make any sense. Like this alternate Picard just insists he has to get off the ship, even though it didn't work the first time he did it. So I don't know what he would think would happen the second time.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, if I'm trying to explain away what's going on, I mean, maybe it's something with the way the entity sent him back in the loop.
Yep.
I don't know. It's weird. What's almost as weird is real Picard's like hatred of this guy.
Yes, and it's
like immediately.
Yes, immediately is kind of the problem with it. I can understand him disliking him later. And I remembered when I watched this when I was, younger growing up, I was always struck by I didn't really understand why Picard didn't like him. I think I get it now in that this Picard is so sort of cowardly and did not do what our Picard would do that he doesn't really like him, which makes sense. Yeah, they don't really stress that point. Like you figured they'd have a scene where he'd yell at him and be like, "Why did you leave? Like, what's wrong with you?" And they never do that.
Well, he says like only in one scene, like, "Tell me, why did you leave the ship?" But he didn't. There's no berating of. He's trying to figure out why he left, not you coward. How could you leave this ship?
Yeah, right, exactly. And it's I just feel like it's a lost opportunity because they make this second Picard so. There's a good script in here if you make the second Picard just like our Picard, and our Picard having to kill him is actually like a meaningful thing.
Or at least a little bit more, the same but different and somehow. I mean, Patrick Stewart's obviously a good enough actor to pull it off.
Right.
Counselor, if I were to leave the Enterprise, would its attention still be focused on me?
Yes, I think it would.
You'd never survive.
And in those few seconds, the Enterprise might break free. That's what the other Picard must have thought.
Captain, where are you going?
You have the bridge, number 1.
You're leaving the ship?
We may be on a road that has no turns.
No, it's just because I feel like Picard killing his clone should be more, or not his clone, but whatever it is, like should be more impactful than it is played here. I know they cue dramatic music when he does it and everything, but it never feels like he did it for any particular reason when he could have just handcuffed him or knocked him out. Or I guess it deals with the situation of you never have to deal with the character again if Picard just kills him. You don't have to explain him existing.
Yeah.
And it felt strange, and it felt like I was supposed to feel something more impressive than I actually saw.
Like, oh my gosh, he just killed himself. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. I think if he had been a little more like Picard, maybe, but he was just like so different. He was like killing a robot.
Right, and if he's going to be so different, you have to give me a reason as to why he's different. Like it's a different universe or something, not just a different future. Like that that episode where the Worf Parallels one, I think, where they encounter like 1 billion different Enterprises and they're all different. Something like that would make sense.
Yep.
And it's funny.
Sorry, I was thinking, or do you remember the alternative factor from the original series?
Yes, yep.
It was like a mirror universe made of antimatter or something. It was a terrible episode, but it made me think of that.
Yeah, that's the way some of the first or the original series goes. It's funny that I thought of what Parallels, that episode, because I think that they did this episode 1,000,000 times better in season 5 with Cause and Effect is basically a redo of this episode.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's what I noticed as well. Some of the stuff that they were talking about, I think they mentioned repeating it all over again. Like, just like Cause and Effect.
Yep.
Cause and Effect is an amazing a very different, but it takes the same idea of a loop
Right.
and expands upon that in a way that makes a lot more sense.
Yes, and gives you actual stakes because, spoiler, the ship blows up in cause and effect.
Yeah.
Which it does here, but you never see it. You just, it exists as sort of like an idea that this could happen. But yeah, cause and effect is one of my favorites. But
the other thing is that they're like obviously worried and freaked out, but no one is actually that concerned.
no, they're not.
Like, okay, well, things are happening exactly like we saw, so in about, an hour, we should all be dead.
Yeah, right.
No one's like, they didn't talk about, hey, maybe we should evacuate the saucer section before we keep flying. Maybe we should, make peace with our loved ones.
Right, exactly. It's the I always feel like these are times when Troy could shine. Like when they're watching the log and the Enterprise blows up, everyone just sits there as though they are watching a video of like a leaf blowing along the ground. Like they're so bored by this whole thing. And Troy, she could at least react
Captain,
to it.
Everyone is losing their shit.
Yeah, Captain, everyone is extremely nervous, as she's shown in previous episodes, where she's not unwilling to betray people's feelings for whatever reason. Just call them
Captain, the ensign over there just peed his pants. I mean, I just want to announce that to everyone.
Something wrong with him, Captain. Get him out of here. But yeah, I'm just surprised.
And then like near the end, he says, "We may be on a road that has no turns," meaning we're all gonna die.
Right.
He just walks off the bridge, and Riker's just, all right. Well, I guess I'm on the bridge for right now. I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, it's a weird
except
scene.
Die.
He just stands. He just sits there. I think you identified what the turning point is for me, though. It's the in the conference room. They have this thing where Riker, in a way that I felt was like very out of character and very out of the story, is just like, we're stuck on this path. We have to finish it. And I didn't really understand why he felt that way. I feel like you could try to change, which is something that they fix in cause and effect. They at least argue the points of whether or not it's worth it to try changing something.
Plus, also, Riker seems to me like the exact kind of person who would be, let's change it.
Right, yes, he's the cowboy.
Let's get off this train.
Data should be the one arguing, we don't know what to do, so we might as well keep going with what we're doing. Yeah. It's a strange little side effect, but yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. Everything's fine up until that point. That's my main problem. And then a lot of the stuff stops making sense. Why the entity is cluing in on Picard is never explained.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
It's. I think. Yeah, it's weird. I don't know how they could have made it better per se, but it's almost like the entity part is kind of thrown in there, which I suppose makes sense because Troy's talking about a consciousness, but then they kind of drop that, and it's not very involved. Aside from the 2 blasts of energy that Picard gets, otherwise it doesn't change anything else.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't make contact with anyone or anything.
Yeah, it doesn't. They don't learn anything. I feel like in later episodes when they run into kind of weird things like this, there's at least some kind of hint at a resolution like, oh yes, its curiosity has been satisfied, or it deposited a message in our databanks.
Yep.
Like in Voyager Twisted, I think.
Yep.
Where they have that whole weird stuff which makes no sense. But in the end, they kind of explained, oh yeah, it was this alien entity, which you don't even necessarily need to explain, but it's almost like it was a holdover from the first draft where Q was involved, and they just forgot to delete that part.
It is. That's always so weird. I know they're under pressure to finish these, but it's like, couldn't you just delete those lines? Like I don't understand why they stay in there when you're clearly not going to reconcile that with what actually happens at the end of it. It's strange. It's just like when Picard gets shocked, he's like, that one was personal. It's like, what the hell does that mean? How do you know that's personal?
If you're gonna start like that, play off on it more, make it talk more about it, have Troy say something else.
Yeah, feel like It's just I think the show, because I'm certainly, and I think the show might just be getting tired with these sort of godlike beings at this point, which is ironic because Q is going to be in this one. but I know that I'm certainly getting tired. It's not as bad as it was in the original series when like every other episode was a godlike being. But there's certainly a fair share of them in the Next Generation in the first early seasons. And I'm sort of glad they got rid of it. I really wish they had just made the Vortex not an entity. But that would mean that they'd have to come up with a better resolution for what the other Picard was doing.
Yeah, I feel if you get rid of the entity, then things get weirder.
Right. Or you at least
or maybe make it
more.
Maybe make it an entity, but make it not so personal. Either way, you have to either get rid of it completely or play off it a lot more. Otherwise, it feels thrown in.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
Like a recipe that you suddenly added some random ingredient to, but didn't do anything with.
Right. If someone tells you that you have to make something for a bake sale, and then you bake it, and you show up to like a barbecue, and you're like, "What the hell is it? Like? Why did you tell me to put baking soda in this?" It's sort of a strange. It's a big problem I just have with a lot of these early episodes is that the resolutions just don't add up to what I've been watching for the first 35 minutes of the show. And it's a little bit frustrating at this point. And that's why the episodes that don't do that tend to be more favorable, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, I still like this episode. And I was honestly, I've been debating about what rating I want to give it. It definitely has flaws, but I guess it's disappointing because so much of the rest of the episode is done very well.
Yes. Yep.
Setting up the atmosphere. And in a show that's not great at doing kind of atmospheric things sometimes, especially a creepy atmosphere, is not easy to pull off.
No.
And I feel like how well this one pulled it off, the fact that they weren't able to do more with it,
I've been
a little bit disappointing.
I've been surprised. The second season has had some of the creepier. I didn't realize so many of the episodes had sort of an undertone of creepiness to them, which is kind of nice. It feels like it goes away later on in the series, but it's effective. It's like really effective early in these episodes anyway. I would, let's see. I just wanted to, as a sort of wrap up, we can talk about the guest actors. We have Pulaski, who's effective in this. She doesn't really do anything particularly special, but she's there. Pulaski
is definitely has definitely been toned down over the past couple episodes.
Yeah, this is
she would go out of her way, and the writers would go out of their way to show it, her being an asshole to Data, but she seems to have really chilled out. I wonder if it was a letter writing campaign.
Yeah, I'm sure there was, but she's also she's become virtually completely replaceable with Crusher. If it was Crusher saying these lines, it would be exactly the same thing. Yeah. They've reverted just to that sort of generic doctor person.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't think she's as miscast as I think you said she was, but she's definitely not. I feel like the problem is that when you tone her down that much, then she ends up being kind of boring.
Right. Yeah. That is the problem.
She needs it's a balancing act with how much edge you want to give a character.
Yep.
This is tangential, but I was listening to Mission Log they were talking about Pulaski, and they seem to think that a lot of the hate towards Pulaski is owing to the fact that she's a woman.
Yes,
and you can get away with, being kind of an asshole like McCoy if you're a man, but if you're a woman, then you're just a bitch. I'm like, no, I think if McCoy was saying that to Data, I'd still think he was an asshole.
Yeah, well, it's tough because it's sort of a different time thing, and what's weird because I heard the Mission Log talking about that, and I can't.
It just bugged me. I had to tell someone about it.
No, I can't deny. I can't deny that I'm sure there's some portion of the fan base where that's true, because that's true for like virtually every female character that's ever had a role. I wouldn't say it's the majority, and I think that you can have a intelligent, non-sexist way to dismiss Pulaski as a good character. The thing is, it just keeps. I won't go into this deep because I feel like I talk about this a lot, but it's. The difference is the tone, where McCoy existed in a show where the series is sort of much more, the characters are combative with each other. Pulaski exists in a show where the characters all get along, and so she sticks out like a sore thumb when she's being antagonistic towards people.
Well, yeah, and also, one, Spock would let McCoy have it too.
Right,
I mean,
yes,
in the Vulcan way, but Data just sits there like a poor punching bag,
and
which makes you feel much more sympathy for Data.
No one else defends Data.
No one.
which is bizarre. You'd think someone
except for Geordi occasionally.
Well, I think he only did it in elementary. He's like, "Oh, doctor, don't talk about Data like that." And then he's like, "I'll challenge you."
Almost like he's defending his pet.
Yes, or
like your dog's ugly. Or no, it's not.
Yeah, she's like, your computer sucks, Geordi, and he's like, no, my computer's great. So like, let's have it run some imaging scans or something.
I'm a member of the PC Master Race. How dare you say that?
You can visit us at r/.
But the other thing is that, like, when McCoy and Kirk and Spock are all hanging out, you have that sense of camaraderie. Like, you have the sense of, oh yeah, these guys have been buddies forever. They can say all kinds of stuff to each other. It's just, they don't care. They've gotten used to it.
Right.
Pulaski is stated, we know exactly how long she's been there. She's been there a couple weeks.
Right, yes, exactly.
And there's this newcomer coming in saying, oh yeah.
Replacing
Data.
Replacing another it's not even like it's a new character.
Yeah.
It's just replacing another character that no one seemed to really have any problems with.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's Pulaski's role. She's there. She's somewhat effective as a sort of neutered Dr. Pulaski. And I had to give a shout out to Cole Meany's totally irrelevant performance as Miles O'Brien in this. He basically just comes into the shuttle bay at the end and stands there for no particular reason.
Oh, speaking of Pulaski, after she reads that Picard is dead, she just kind of walks over to O'Brien, closes her tricorder. Well, nothing else I can do. She just leaves.
Nothing else to do here. Yeah, she's
you take care of the body.
pull this guy off. And O'Brien is just standing there in the middle of the room, and he's got his eyes glued to this corpse, and then it disappears, and he tells Picard that it's gone.
Captain Picard, this is Shuttle Bay 2. The other Picard and the shuttle are gone.
Explain.
They just vanished.
And it's like, wow, that was
outstanding.
I wonder what his paycheck was for that appearance. I mean, he probably made more than I make in a year, but it's like, what a strange thing to do. Do you have any idea how much their salaries were on this show?
I honestly have no clue. I don't even have an idea of what kind of scale.
I don't even know.
They get paid.
Like, I was trying to Google it and I couldn't find anything.
I bet at the time Patrick Stewart was a lot cheaper than he is now.
Yes, I'm sure it's in today's dollars. It's probably a surprisingly low amount of money per episode. It's not like a Friends episode where they're making $1 million per show. But
wow, really?
Later Friends, each cast member was making $1 million.
Holy crap!
So, I'd imagine it's decent, but probably not as crazy. I was just surprised I couldn't find anything doing a quick Google search. I couldn't find any numbers or even a guesstimate.
I don't know. If I go to a convention, I'll ask one.
Yeah, you should
one of them.
make that your first question. Well,
how much do you make?
Well, it couldn't have been that much, right? If they keep doing conventions, because you have to keep getting paid.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. With conventions, the thing is that a lot of times they're actually there for charity, because they genuinely like the fan base. Like, they'll sometimes say at their booths when you're doing the autographs,
where the money
autographs
goes.
is $20. All proceeds go to whatever charity that they're sponsoring at the time. And a lot of people like genuinely just love being around fans, and they also want to keep
in profile.
In the news.
Yes, exactly. No, I feel bad. I'm not slandering them. If it does go to charity, it's excellent. Mm-hmm. It's just
well, some people definitely are there because they need the money.
It's a tough rope to walk.
I'm sure that the TNG cast are all doing well. Actually, I've been to a lot. I actually tell you, the best people to go to a convention with are anything with Michael Dorn and Jonathan Frakes.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Those two are by far the funniest, and they're not as like crazy popular as Spiner and Stewart are, so you can get in and kind of in a smaller, more personal room.
Sure.
And they joke with each other all the time. It is hilarious. They are genuinely like really good friends.
Oh, it's good. After
the whole cast, it's a lot of fun.
Good. You're here to save the convention face after I slandered it in the last.
Oh no. This is also very tangential, but there's definitely like a kind of stereotype for what conventions are, and there are definitely people like that.
Yeah.
And I'll be sitting in a hall for a panel, and there's some guy up there who's just making a complete fool of himself asking a question. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be in this room anymore.
It's the famous Simpsons joke where it's like an Itchy and Scratchy convention, and the guy says Itchy plays his rib clearly the same rib twice, but it produces two separate notes. It's like I imagine that's kind of what the kind of thing I'm leery of.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm a huge Trek fan, but I still shower and dress myself
in your
properly.
sonic shower, which is Star Trek.
Oh my gosh!
But those are the two guest star appearances. Obviously, Pulaski's still calling herself a guest star, and O'Brien is there. And I was shocked to sort of realize how much O'Brien is present in season 2.
I had kind of forgotten it too. I knew he was around, but he is there a lot. He's the only guest actor that actually stuck around.
Yes, yeah.
Because Salar didn't, to my everlasting disappointment.
Yeah.
Because I would have loved to see a lot more of Salar.
It's just more. I was kind of watching this one, just thinking there really is a lack. There's just a lack of female characters. It's really just Troy, because Pulaski does not seem to be involved in.
And Troy is barely a character.
Yeah, and they sort of fix this when Crusher returns. She takes a bigger role, and I think they get better at writing her.
Yeah, they do better with Troy and Crusher later on. Yep. It's kind of sad to watch.
It's just I was trying to think, because I made the claim to Clay in a previous episode that I don't think the show is writing the female characters poorly because they're female. I feel like they're in the roles that are the least exciting roles to talk about.
Yes, and I'm definitely the doctor and the wishy-washy counselor role, which is never clearly defined.
Which I was just thinking, it's like I feel like there must be a better way to write Troy. I'm just surprised they didn't really try. It seems like
she should be like Picard's ace in the hole every single episode.
Yeah,
like,
she should.
Oh yeah, that guy's lying. Oh yeah, that guy's telling the truth.
Right. Yeah, and they just don't do that. So I just wanted to stress that point too. I just think it's they unfortunately cast females in the least exciting roles possible. And
you know what? And that's true, because later good female characters
appear,
like Dax.
Yep.
Dax is Data's role, kind of.
Sort of.
She gets her a lot more kind of action.
Yes, it's funny. I'd call Odo the Data role. I
mean, like his position on the ship.
As
science, kind of the ops sciencey kind of person. That's what Dax is, and Kira is, of course, Riker's role. So yeah, they get the more interesting roles that you can kind of do a little bit more with.
It's funny watching. I just occasionally watch a DS9 episode every once in a while. I'm not really flying through them, but I was just watching it, and my wife is watching TNG much more regularly, just because I'm sort of forcing her to watch it because I'm watching the TV now. And DS9 came on, and she doesn't really like DS9. You could probably do an interesting study. She has the same knee-jerk reaction to it I did when it first came out.
What was that?
Just that I didn't like the setting. I didn't like the sort of darkness to it. Like physically dark, like everything's very underlit in Deep Space Nine. And I just wasn't really appealed to it, but it was just on. I was watching an episode, and she was just sort of half-heartedly watching. And her one comment was, "The female characters on the show are so much better than on Next Generation."
Yes,
it's like, they really are.
Well, DS9 only gets really going once it gets the Defiant.
Yes.
So they realize that when your only method of reaching out and touching things is a freaking runabout.
Got to get that sumbitch out there.
Yeah.
Cool. Sorry, go ahead.
2 other notes. One, Worf's expression and line when he's eating the eggs.
Yes, delicious.
I love it. And 2, maybe I'm just being trained to see sexism everywhere I go, but Pulaski's kind of expression, like, "Oh, your father liked to cook?"
Yes.
Like, a man liked to cook? Oh my gosh. And then Worf just straight out says, in my understanding, the woman takes part in the cooking for families.
And
jeez, guys.
I laugh at that scene for all those things you mentioned, and then off of that, Pulaski goes, "Eating together is something that builds friendship and something else," and she goes, "Something which is lacking in the 24th century." It's like, you motherfuckers seem closer than any family I've ever seen in my life. What is she even talking about?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, it's kind of weird. Another thing with that I'd forgotten about is the replicator, because Data's like, oh, this is a very inefficient means of cooking the meal, and Riker's, well, yeah, but a replicator doesn't allow for any artistry, which I think starts the trend of they start off TNG with these fancy replicators that they say can make anything perfectly.
Right. Yep.
Like that guy from the backward 24th century comes here and tastes our wonder food, and he's just like blown away.
Yep.
His mind is blown out the back of his head. It's so good. But ever since then, replicators have gone steadily downhill.
Right. Yeah.
Because they constantly talk about how, oh man, replicated food, nah, I'll make it by hand. It's way more nutritious or whatever. And then down all the way to by the time you hit Voyager, the replicators just flat out suck.
Right, yeah.
Nobody wants to eat anything that comes out of those.
And it's particularly noticeable with people who drink. Everyone who drinks replicator or synthol is just like, what the fuck is this? I don't want this. And the other thing, you know, Riker has that line about hand cooking makes individual dishes or whatever. Mm-hmm. I would argue that I would imagine chefs of the 24th century are programming the replicators to do things. You know, like why can't you?
Presumably, customize? I would imagine that like they make the recipes by hand,
right,
and then they just program it into the replicator. Like, all right, this is how I made it. Now make this 1,000 billion
exactly.
times.
It's just like a transporter. You put the food in there, it transports it up, and then it makes the recipe or whatever.
Yeah, there's no real reason to believe that the replicator like makes crappy food.
No,
because it's literally just making the food. But ever since like TNG season 1, it just goes steadily downhill. Like Kern in season 3 just straight up hates it.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Cisco cooks all his stuff by hand, and Neelix, of course, cooks half of everything on Voyager by hand.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Kind of weird.
It's sort of that sci-fi trope of like fear of technology, even as they're surrounded by technology.
Yes,
which is always kind of fascinating.
And the final note is: did you read about the director for this episode, Scanlon?
No, he's been here before. Would you?
Yeah, Scanlon did 4 episodes. He did The Big Goodbye, Skin of Evil, Contagion, and Times Squared.
Okay.
But this is his last one because, quote, after directing 4 episodes and seeing how out of control the cast would act when not filming, Scanlon walked out and refused to ever direct any further episodes of TNG again, and he never did.
Well, that's too bad. He certainly hasn't directed some of my favorite episodes, but that's a combination of writing and direction.
I think his best one. I think Contagion and Times Squared are probably his best.
His 2 best. Because what are the other ones? Big Goodbye.
Skin of Evil,
Skin of Evil
was terrible,
yeah, terrible.
And The Big Goodbye.
Huh, interesting.
Counselor, if I were to leave the Enterprise, would its attention still be focused on me?
Yes, I think it would.
You'd never survive.
But in those few seconds, the Enterprise might break free. That's what the other Picard must have thought.
Captain, where are you going?
You have the bridge, number 1.
You're leaving the ship?
We may be on a road that has no turns.
Well, let's see. So, yeah, we'll call it a day there. Let's get to... I'm going to give my rating now. Well, you can give your rating first.
I've been kind of flipping back and forth. I have trouble coming up with ratings, so what I do is I come up with a 1 out of 5 and then pick on a 1 out of 10 scale, that would fit. So like
fit.
A 3 out of 5 is like a 5 or a 6.
Yep.
So I've been debating between basically a 6 or a 7, and I'd probably lean towards 6. It's the parts that are good are great, but I think there's not enough of a payoff, so I'd probably give it a 6, maybe 6.5.
Interesting.
6 out of 10.
6 out of 10.
So like a high 3 on your scale.
Right, yeah. My scale, just to clarify for anyone who doesn't know it, is a 3 is like a solid average episode of Star Trek. A 4 is some episode that you would show a non-fan and think they'd probably enjoy it. A 5 is a classic. So that means that a 2 is a okay episode with problems, and a 1 is just a bad episode that I probably wouldn't want to rewatch. This one on my scale falls as a 2. It's a potentially okay episode that has problems that cause me to not really enjoy it as much or think that it's flawed. So that's what I'm giving this bad boy. I'm giving it a 2 out of 5, and Christian's giving it a 6 out of 10.
Yep.
Interesting. So slightly different perceptions on this one anyway.
Well, like I said, my kind of impression of it is probably a little bit skewed. But
yep. It's tough. Once you get into the episode you like, it's tough to, or the ones you're familiar with, it's tough to be objective with them in a certain way. But cool. Thanks, dude, for coming on.
Absolutely.
Thank you for talking about Times Squared with us. And
yes, thank you.
We'll have to have you come back on at some point in the future here.
Absolutely, definitely.
So, guys, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the content, if you're listening on YouTube, a like and a comment's appreciated. If you're on iTunes, which we also are, you can search Penske Podcast and pull it up there. A rating and a review is also very helpful. Helps us go up the rankings a little bit. And many thanks to everyone who has done that in the past.
Yes, absolutely. This is a great podcast. I've really been enjoying listening, and it deserves more views.
No, thank you very much. It's been fun. You can also go to the subreddit Star Trek Viewing Party, and everyone that's basically going the pace of this podcast. So you can sort of follow along with written feedback from a lot of other people who have excellent ideas as well. And I think I'm hitting a point where I'm starting to hit a disagreement zone with a few people, with not angry disagreement, but personalities are coming through that it's clear which shows certain people like and which ones they don't like, and it's you start to realize what kind of Trek shows you enjoy.
Oh yeah, I mean a little bit of disagreement is good.
It is.
I feel like you and I can disagree about something and still be civil about it.
Absolutely. That's really what it's all about. I imagine maybe some people would get very upset and rowdy about these things, but it is just Star Trek, right? That's the best part. It's a bunch of people wearing spandex flying around the universe.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait till season 3.
It'll be good. We're almost there. So next week, or the next episode for this one, is the Icarus Factor. It's where Riker's daddy comes back. So I'll have someone on for that. So thank you again, Christian.
You're welcome, sir.
And I will see you guys later.